We live in an incredible age of information. More and more, we're discovering that we've been lied to and misled about much of our human history. Cory Hughes is providing profound revelations about World War I, World War II, the JFK assassination, Martin Luther King's assassination, and much, much more on his new Substack, Bloody History. Subscribe now for as little as $5 monthly. Just click that link right in the description to get started now and learn about our true history. Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guests are hosts of Nephilim Death Squad. First, I have a couple of announcements. We're resuming our film fundraiser due to a few roadblocks and equipment breakdowns. We're hoping to be able to resume post-production as soon as possible. The release of the film may be slightly delayed, but if you'd like to help with a donation, anything is greatly appreciated. Any donation of $50 or more, you're going to get a 1-hour one-on-one discussion with myself, either recorded for a podcast or a private discussion. You'll get your name in the credits of the upcoming film, a pre-release showing and download, and a PDF of a warning from history. And I want to once again thank everyone for all the incredible love and support over the years. Other ways to help: you can get a Rokfin premium membership at rokfin.com/FKN+. You can download our podcast episodes through Spreaker. That is always free and easy for you. If you'd like to help in any other way, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome Nephilim Death Squad. They are a group of unlikely heroes determined to unravel the mysteries of the universe and expose the truth behind the world's most notorious conspiracies, paranormal, occult, and the hidden history of humanity. Lobster, Raven, welcome. How y'all doing?
Good, brother. Good. Thank you for having us. We're excited to talk to you. I know we tried to set this up before and we had some scheduling issues, but glad to get it done.
Yes, man.
Yeah, what can we say?
You
on
can say
the
whatever
show?
you want on this show. It's beautiful.
I was being a spick in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
So, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Yeah, the schedule's conflicted. Things got all messed up. I'm also retarded. So I guess you were like, can you come on this day? And he asked me and I said, yeah. And then my wife was like, you're going to be in another country on this day. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
Hey, man.
It wouldn't have been such a big deal if it was not a country that just didn't have internet.
It barely has electricity. It's wild out there.
Right on. Well, it's
conspiracy.
all good. You guys are here now. And as I was telling you before, I love what y'all are doing, especially because you're bringing some levity to even the darkest of conspiracies. And I really appreciate that. And I thought it would be a good time today getting your insights into the insanity that we're now drowning in as independent content creators, as well as some of the deeper spiritual implications of what is unfolding right now. I know you get into that a lot, and I really like your insights. But before we do any of this is your first time on. Introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what led each of you down your path.
I guess I'll start. So my name is David Corbo, a.k.a. The Raven, one half of Nephilim Death Squad. I also do another show called Timeline Cleanse. Wouldn't recommend that to anybody.
Horrible
It's
show.
Very offensive. Yes, very, very horrifying. But what got me into this, man, when I was like 16 years old, I had a couple of stories divulged to me in the way of childhood experiences from my grandmother. And to make a long story short on her end, it seems that she was a victim of the alien abduction phenomena, certainly sleep paralysis and being beset upon by shadow entities and things of that nature. And this is something that had plagued her since childhood. I also had a woman who was more or less my guardian when I was a kid, who had very similar stories. And she told stories of what we now know to be the Hat Man. So when I'm 16 years old.
So you were groomed? Like what
essentially,
I'm hearing,
yes.
You were groomed by your family into the conspiracy cult. And that's crazy. I think I was too, but please continue.
So I get some fundamental stories from my biological grandmother, her experiences. I connect them to my guardian's stories, and I realize this is very strange. They're very similar. One thing leads to another, and I become obsessed with this idea of entities and kind of connecting them to my own childhood experiences. And I think if you stare at spirituality long enough, you're going to become accustomed with the symbols and things of that nature that represent these entities. And then you see them in Hollywood and you see them in the music industry. And that begets a whole new line of exploration that since I'm 16 years old, I've been tugging at those strings. And it took me until 33 years old to decide to make a show about it. But I would say that I'm kind of this lifelong conspiracy sort of dark spirituality enthusiast. I've always been fascinated by it. And it definitely paved the way to make me, I guess, the content creator that I am today. So
right on.
It's a crazy question to ask because on a show like this, I know I have to give that sort of an answer. Usually my answer would be like, well, who are you? Where did you start? I started in like the libertarian space into politics. That's like all like social media shit. And that's kind of how I grew my brand. Top Lobster, we sell t-shirts, racist t-shirts, 2 for 1, buy one, show your friend. But really, like how David is alluding to, I think the reason that why I'm here is the same reason he is as well, because looking back at my grandparents, my grandmothers that I knew, they were into some weird stuff. And I feel like that's passed down in a family. There's like generational, you get a touch of weirdness. So just found out my grandma from Puerto Rico who fled to New York. It was all like not like illegally fled because it's a Commonwealth, but she came to New York at a very young age to escape some weird stuff going on out there. And apparently, when I spoke to my aunt that was still in Puerto Rico, still alive, she made a deal with God that she would stop doing some of these things. And I was like, what are these things? He's like, oh, well, she was seeing a palm reader and a couple of other things. And I'm like, oh, shit, there's a weird spiritual aspect passed down from my grandmother that's on my aunt. You can watch her prior episodes of Nephilim Death Squad on my old show. And the supernatural has also touched me since a child. So I'm kind of like paying attention to this. And that opens up your conspiracy brain. That opens up my conspiracy brain. And you can go from political all the way back to spiritual, which basically I think that's the underlying of all of this stuff. If you want to talk about from QAnon to the Mandela effect, at the very bottom of it is all Nephilim shit. And that's like kind of why we focus on that as our show.
Right on. Now, for me, it was almost the opposite. I started looking into conspiracies in around 2012, 2013, and for the longest time, I was a sleeper. From a very early age, though, from childhood, I was into all this stuff, and then sex, drugs, and rock and roll were introduced, and I just fell into the Matrix land for the longest time. But around 2012 is when I just started to wake up. I was going through a bad divorce, and I had to look at something besides my shitty life at the time, so I started looking into conspiracies and all kinds of weird stuff, and I just got drawn in. And eventually that led me to a more spiritual perspective, which really is, like you said, I think that's the fundamental basis of what's I think the spiritual and metaphysical realms dictate what we are experiencing here in this physical reality in a very powerful way, which we're going to get into as well. But going back to the events of 2020, when that first started rolling out, myself and many others called it out very early. But there was a sense of dread and fear behind it, such as, are we going to be rounded up and put into camps? Will my show be able to continue on? Are they going to censor everything to where we have no more voices? And now looking back, I have this spiritual perspective and understanding that, to me, there's a greater force guiding everything. And it seems like where we're at now is where we're supposed to be. If you look back at what happened from 2020 and beyond, I don't know if we would have had this many awakened souls right now on this planet if it wouldn't have unfolded as it did. So I'd like to get your thoughts on that. We'll start from there.
So I think that a lot of us had that same experience. 2020 did rattle us and wake us up in a tremendous manner. I just want to say on a previous thing that you touched on, going through a divorce and having to focus on something else. There's a similarity in what I was going through, because I said that I started to wake up at 16, but at 17 I became homeless. And coincidentally, it's when I delved in the deepest, because there does seem to be, this is something I could focus on instead of the tragedy that is happening around me. So I have that in common with you. But when it comes to this idea of awakening, which is certainly true, around COVID, a lot of us were woken up to the uncomfortable realization that maybe things aren't the way that they seem. And I think it was corruption on a high level that was put on display, and certainly in a way that seemed like it was messy, right? They were dropping the ball, they were fumbling the ball, they were doing it where typically in years prior, the veil was something that you had to pull back in order to see, whether it's the symbolism or the rituals, the ceremonies that are happening, the secret societies that are operating, things of that nature. Around 2020, 2019, it was like in between acts, they were fumbling behind the curtain. And so the curtain was like getting pulled open, and we weren't even doing anything. And yet we were getting a glimpse of it, certainly with the whole Epstein thing and things.
I'm just imagining. Imagine if we're watching David right now, and every 5 minutes or so as he's monologuing, somebody just pulls that red curtain behind. It's just a bunch of dead hookers, and then they close it. And he'd be like, what the fuck? That's what they were doing. And yes, right?
I agree with that. Where you used to have to look at like a stain on my shirt and the way I'm like throwing symbols up or something, and you'd be like, I don't know, I think this guy's got dead hookers. But instead, the curtain just keeps moving, and dead hookers just keep,
out. Like
exactly. So we're going through a lot of that during COVID. That woke people up. But I do want to say that in regards to this whole Great Awakening thing, you said that it feels like a greater spiritual force is guiding things. And I would say that is certainly true, but there are lesser spiritual forces that are
reacting to that and pushing back in ridiculous ways, right?
Yes. And the ways in which I've come up with an analogy that I think is pretty fitting. It's like where people go, are we in the middle of a great awakening? Are we in the middle of a great deception? Are we in the middle of a great reset? And I think that the great deception and the great awakening actually go hand in hand. And what I mean by that is, imagine that you are a person who's sound asleep, and then suddenly alarms start blaring and you're woken up out of your sleep. And those alarms are COVID, right? They wake you up abruptly. You weren't ready for it, but you're faced with this realization that something is wrong. Something is desperately wrong. Now imagine that somebody bursts into your room and starts telling you, this is what's happening right now. This is why the alarms are going off. You need to follow me. And the problem with that is, like, I saw this video recently where some chick does this really hilarious thing. She wakes up her boyfriend, hands him a stack of Uno cards, and goes, babe, it's your turn. And the guy is in such a stupor for a moment that he starts looking through his cards, and he plays the one that he thinks is the best move there. Yeah, reverse. Yeah, reverse, exactly. And so in that moment, he plays it at first, but then he realizes it, and he goes, man, what are you doing? And he goes back to sleep. I'm afraid that that's who we are. In this moment, when you have a bunch of people wake up, as a young conspiracy theorist, when I was 16, 17, 18, I made a lot of mistakes. I thought a lot of things were true that ended up not being true. I thought a lot of things were coming that ended up not coming. I don't think that was indicative of being a child. I think that was indicative of being somebody who just woke up. So what happens when you have the masses all wake up simultaneously? And what if that's not indicative of childhood? What if it is indicative of waking up and they all have to go through that process? Imagine how much you were wrong.
They have no fundamentals at the bottom of it either. There's no, like, a lot of these people don't have an awareness of even political ideology and what's been going on, and cultural ideology. Now they're awakened to deep conspiracy.
Yes.
And they're like, I've got to pick a side. And they pick a side, and then things get weird. I think that's
what are those sides, by the way? Is it QAnon is my shepherd? Is it the New Age movement is my shepherd? Is it is it the Bach Saga is my shepherd? It doesn't matter what it is. I'm just saying people often make the mistake of like, if this was a lie, then this thing must definitively be true. And it's like, actually, there's a lot of branches you potentially could go down. And ultimately, there's only one truth. And so it becomes very tricky. And I think that is kind of the place that we find ourselves in right now that I'm trying to caution against. It's like, when you've been lied to, you want to jump on another boat right away because you're treading
Jewish
water.
Stuff.
Right. Well, there's even that, too. There's the whole Jewish thing. And it's like, look, there's a lot of validity to calling out the Jews, but certainly there are a lot of people that are jumping entirely in that ship. And I just want to tell people like, hey, it's okay to tread water for a while. Don't scramble onto the next boat that comes your way.
You want to be the first ones wrong. Like
yes, yes, exactly. So, but that's basically my thoughts on where we are, right now, especially after COVID.
Right on. Any other thoughts, Lobster?
Yeah, it looks like we're going to repeat World War II. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't know, like nothing I can do to stop it, but that's where all the fingers are pointed. So,
well, you mentioned the polarization and the extremes that we are being given the option, and it's not even an option because if you don't choose one of the extremes, you become the target, you become the enemy. Just because you're looking at things realistically and you're observing it from an outside viewpoint because you're not sucked into these political ideologies or any of the other polarizing issues that are tearing apart every community, not just people that are in the mainstream paying attention to it in the sleepers, but even in the conspiracy community. And if you look at it long enough and you step back and take a big picture look at everything, it becomes obvious that there's something playing both sides, that you don't want to be a part of the extreme on either side. Well, you look at the left, and the ideologies coming out of there has become so insanely dark, satanic, pedophilic that there's no way you could align with that. So you get pushed a little bit towards the right wing, and then you have the same extremes up there. You see Trump standing up giving speeches with Israeli flags behind him, and you can just think of the possibilities that could unfold just from the guise of being a savior figure in the presidential seat. So we've got these polarities that we're presented with. Like I said earlier, if you don't align with the extremes, you become the enemy, and this is the space where critical thinkers are right now. What do you guys think about that?
Do you know what this is? As you're saying that, you're painting the picture, and I said it before, but it's always Moloch versus Baal. This is like, these are the choices we're given, whether you're in Nazi Germany, who was, people that this is like, we love to go back to this because that movement's really growing of people that are like unironically idolizing Hitler. And I'm like, hey, he was into a bunch of like weird occult stuff, like small G God stuff. And they're like, yeah, but the Jews. And I'm like, all right, so the Jews, the Star of Remphan, Moloch. And the other side, Baal. They're worshiping what's the god?
So there's
Zeus.
A lot of Zeus veneration.
Yeah, so Zeus, god of thunder, and then if you kind of like trace his lineage down and like the similarities that Baal has been drawn with and what Zeus looks like, people kind of infer that these were the same gods, the same fallen angel beings that are being written about differently throughout culture. But it's that guy versus that guy, and I feel like we're being presented the same thing. It's like, well, we have one side that has clear child sacrifice going on. That's Baal. No, that's Moloch today, I guess,
Moloch,
right?
Right. Yeah.
No, I'm sorry. That might be Baal. Jeez,
Moloch is the
no.
child
It's
sacrifice. Yeah, pretty sure.
Yeah, Moloch is the child sacrifice, and then you have the other side, which is Baal, which is funny, right? I don't know, Top, if you've ever seen that meme where it's like red and blue, and it's like, vote for me, and one is literally Moloch, and the other one is Baal, and it's like, I don't think anybody realized how
true
on point that meme was. That meme crushed. That was exactly the truth.
Right.
And that's what we're presented. And it's like, listen, I might vote for Trump anyway, because I say all the time, who am I to deny prophecy? But realistically,
it's interesting, right? I don't know if you guys can see this, but I have this, and I know Top has one too. This coin here, it's a gold coin. Shout out to Matt Rife of Real Rife Technologies. He's the homie, and he sends us all kind of fun stuff. And the thing that he sent us this time was this golden coin with Donald Trump's head next to King Cyrus's head, who was a messianic figure for the Jews. And, you know, it's you alluded to it before, right, where Trump is giving these speeches and there's the Israeli flag and, you know, he's going to the Wailing Wall. He's wearing the little hat. He's kissing it. They're gifting him the silver crown, you know, from this group of rabbis that are, you know, there's so much around. There's this song, Super Trump, by the Israeli Boys Choir. They treat him like a messianic figure. And there's certainly like this big polarizing moment right now that we're seeing with Israel's influence in our own government and our own politics. And, you know, in contrast, people kind of skirting those convictions, saying that we shouldn't have that as an aspect of our own government. And then they're voting for Trump anyway. But I do think that we're being funneled into this. Do you ever get the feeling that it's like a well-written story? I've been on this path lately where I feel like what we're witnessing, especially in regards to Donald Trump, is a piece of theater that is about a comeback story. You know, it's like Albert Pike wrote Morals and Dogma, the 33rd degree Freemason, who says, when the people need a hero, we shall provide one for them. And I think that that is what we're being served up here. We're being served up the guy who people didn't like because of his language, but people who were critical thinkers who appreciated his policy, saw the value in him. And then he is having, you know, a plethora of sort of flimsy allegations levied against him, from the impeachment scandal with Russia to the classified documents, the 34 accounts that he's recently found guilty on, and then they all fall apart, the sexual assault allegations. It's like anybody who's paying attention goes, man, they're throwing everything at this poor guy, and all he wants to do is make gas affordable again. And I think to cap it off with this survival of an assassination attempt, and we were just on Tinfoil Hat talking about our suspicions about whether or not you actually saw what you think you saw during that moment. I think it's really galvanized people to this comeback story. And I think people are so susceptible. I say it a lot. It's like storytelling is integral to the human experience. And it's kind of a great way to hijack our logical minds and hypnotize us. You present us with a good story and we're willing to grab the popcorn, kick our feet up, and enjoy what we're seeing. And I kind of feel like that's exactly what's going on right now. Is we're giving the guy to definitively hate, and we're giving the guy who's experiencing the comeback, who everybody's going to end up loving. And, you know, that does become really dangerous, especially in a time where, to go back to Top's point about all of this Jew rhetoric, the rise of the JQ, the noticers, it's like you're seeing this sentiment of, well, if only we had a strong man who could, you know, clean up Europe, more or less, right? It's kind of the analogy that we're going for right now. And while we're experiencing this unironic rise in Hitler admiration, we're also seeing the appearance of this strong man on the horizon. And when the people need a hero, we will provide them one. Exactly. And I think that that's where we're going. It's like, do I like Donald Trump? Yeah, I do. Do I think he's funny? Yeah, I do. I do like the guy. I do. Do I like affordable food and gas prices and a housing market that isn't, you know, destitute? Yeah, I love all those things. Do I want to stop the wars? Do I want to stop overextending our military? Yeah, I love all that.
Do I hate the Antichrist?
Yes. Now
he checks all those boxes. You see how weird this is for me?
Well, this brings us to the note that I have a star next to. Raven, it's like you're reading my notes here, but the level of theater that we're experiencing, how deep does this go? We used to experience this through events here and there, high-impact events, and symbolism. Now, it seems like they don't need our permission anymore. They're just doing what they do to such an extreme level. Maybe they think we've agreed to enough, but what they're showing us now, it goes beyond, because they have theological implications that have crept into this. They have this hero's journey on both sides, depending on what side you're looking at things. And this, again, depending on what side, this battle of good and evil that is unfolding. And Lobster, you said earlier that who are you to deny prophecy? Well, I kind of look at it as, well, these motherfuckers probably wrote a lot of what we understand as prophecy, and now they're just acting it out in a theatrical way. And they're playing on people's religious and theological understandings and feelings, and they're using that to force this prophecy onto us. And that's the way I've been looking at it, but I want to get your thoughts on it.
It's interesting because all right, so there's a couple of ideas there. That idea right there could fall into the little season sort of theory that is kind of big in the community right now. And that means, are you familiar with that theory?
Satan's little season. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically, for the listeners, it just means that we are operating in after the time of Christ's 1,000-year millennial reign, and in the time of in the scripture, I think Revelation 20, where it says, and then Satan will be loose for a little season. People think that that could be like 1,000 years, and there's some hidden history, and we're operating in that. Therefore, that would mean that Satan and his army are recreating the prophecy of the Bible, which already unfolded, to create confusion. If you don't think we're in the little season, I don't think we are. I think what's going on is that prophecy that's in the Bible about what these angels, these fallen angels, will do in the end times. They know it intimately, but they can't stop it. It's almost like they have to play it out. And I think that we're there. They have to fulfill this prophecy. They know when COVID happens, everything gets real sloppy right around COVID. Maybe they got a signal like it's almost done. Like we gotta get sloppy. We're moving forward fast. And at the same time, they have to still fulfill the prophecy. The same way that they fulfill the prophecy of God's son who will come back and die for our sins and basically take the keys of death from them. They fulfilled that prophecy on their own, even though they knew it. It's in the book of Isaiah, it's in the book of Daniel. They know about it, but they still had to fulfill it. They're the one who put the spear of destiny in his side to kill him. They're the ones who crucified him, acting under the Pharisees. So it's like, it's really a hell of a life where they have no free will because they have to fulfill these prophecies. They know them, they're running face first into them, and they're happening over and over. But I wanted to also address something. Actually, if you guys want to address that,
sure. I think that's a great point, because Top and I have been kind of, I don't know if I want to say struggling with this, but it's like there certainly is an argument for a manufacturing of prophecy. And I think to ignore that is foolish. And the reason I say there's an argument for it is like, look, if you're talking to reduce the prophecies to just, sort of the things that catch your attention the most, right? You're going to have famines, you're going to have diseases, you're going to have wars, you're going to have natural cataclysms. And we've gotten to the point now where they are, in fact, burning down food production factories. They are culling herds. They are manufacturing diseases that affect the first one, like the bird flu, right?
They're using HARP.
Right. They're using HARP to cause these various natural disasters. They're doing gain of function research to cause the pestilence, the disease. They are obviously the driving factor behind the war. So all these things can be accounted for in a way that you can say, yes, someone is creating these things. Now, that being said, does that negate prophecy? Does it make it not true? Well, I mean, people are going to cause war. So we know that people are going to be associated with the war aspect of prophecy. And is it out of the realm of reasonable belief to suggest like, well, yeah, the reason prophecy holds these things is because man will get to a point where he can manipulate the weather. He can do gain of function research. He can destroy the food chain, by burning down this and that and introducing pestilence to the livestock. I mean, I don't know if those two things negate one another, but I can certainly say that it is obvious to me on many levels. You take just the idea of the red heifer prophecy that was kind of gripping everybody. We did a couple of episodes on it. It's a very fascinating topic, right? The idea that you have these 10 red heifers and you sacrifice them, or rather you reduce them to ash, you burn them, you use the ash to bless or sanctify the tools that you're going to use to build the third temple. And then you find out that,
this here will get you into the third temple. Go figure. That's your little pass. It's like a donation to when they build it, and you show it. And
are we going to show up?
Oh, I'm showing up.
We're showing up. Nephilim Death Squad goes to the third temple. And then you find out, it's like, wow, when was the last time they had a perfect red heifer? It's been thousands of years. Oh, and they found how many? 8 or some crazy shit all at once? Yeah. Well, how'd they do that? There is a farm. What's goal it is to genetically create the perfect red heifer. So you go, in Texas. Interesting.
Why not do it in Israel if they got to be in Israel? But whatever.
Who knows? I mean, somebody goes, look, if we can create the perfect red heifer, do you know how much these Jews are going to pay for these cows? It's going to be insane. So I get it. It's a business venture. But like, you go, oh, well, there's the man-made execution of prophecy aspect. So this thing shows itself again and again. And I think that much to to lend itself to the analogy I was giving before about when you jump off the ship because you realize you've been lied to, and then you jump on the first ship that goes by. I don't think that you have to say because they are manufacturing prophecy must mean then that they wrote the prophecy, or the prophecy was never real. They just want to manipulate us with it. I go, there's no reason to jump in that boat either. You got to kind of tread water and go, well, what could this potentially mean? And I think that Top is right to an extent. It's like time is short. They have to. I think they've gotten to a point where the amount of people that are going to be deceived is pretty much there. Like we've gotten to that point. You notice, like when COVID happened, a giant amount of people stepped over to the conspiracy realm, and then like there seems to be no amount of insanity you can show the other side that will get them to entertain the ideas. I think there's only a few stragglers left on the side that like is non-believers. And at this point, now it doesn't really matter. The numbers have settled in such a way that they're pretty much where they're going to remain as this thing unfolds. And so now it's just time to start acting out in the open.
You mentioned something I wrote down here too, operating without consent. So the fallen who are now in charge of, they're moving these little pieces, and they're no longer asking for consent, which is a hermetic principle, which is something that you see constantly whenever you talk about the spiritual realm, or you talk about vampires, or if you talk about what the devil has to do when interacting with God. Like Ed Mabry was telling us in the book of Revelation, basically, that cannot start until the devil has declared his plan, and he has to say it out loud. What I'm going to do. I'm going to usurp your throne. And then they go, okay, cool. Because it's all like very courtroom hearing stuff. There's super laws. Yeah. So you would always wonder, like, I'd always wonder, like, this is the worst being in the world. Why would he then ask for consent? And they always need it to do X, Y, Z. You always have to say yes. You have to invite it in. Otherwise, you tell it to kick rocks in the name of Jesus, and that's it. But now, if I was getting toward the end, and I knew I had the death penalty, I wouldn't really pay attention to these laws. I would just kind of, all right, go. And when you mention that, I'm like, yeah, it does sort of feel like they're just like, okay, go. Everything's on the table, you know? The Smith-Mundt Act for the United States. That kind of rings bells, like, can't do propaganda on our people. Then they do that in like 2013, 2012, and they go, you know what? A little propaganda on the people. Like this kind of thing. And it's like there was a law that stopped this being from doing this. Same way there's a law in the spiritual realm, but now all that stuff feels like it's off the table, and we're just like we're moving forward.
I want to get deeper into who they are, as in the dark intelligences, Nephilim, Archons, fallen ones. But first, I want to go a little deeper into the level of theater that we're experiencing and the awareness that those playing out these roles have. Do you think that people like Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, have any level of awareness of the bigger picture of what's unfolding, especially the spiritual aspects, or are they just unknowingly playing a role based on the experience of their lifetime? What do you think?
I think that there's been no shortage throughout human history of the elite and it doesn't have to be in a political sense either. You can go back to just like the priesthood and things of that nature. They've always communed with entities. I think that there are certain individuals they have stronger relationships with these entities, stronger connections to them, whether it be through bloodline. Sometimes I think that genetics and bloodline do have a lot to do with it. I also think that there's rituals and things that you can do to kind of strengthen that bond. And I think the combination of the two, genetics and the ritual, is probably the sweet spot. And so some of them are keyed into a lot of the information. Some of them are well aware. And then I think that there are movers and shakers who are unaware. It's like the idea of the muse, or I forgot who it was. Maybe it was Jung that said, like, upwards of 80% of our thoughts are not our own thoughts. They're actually being pulled from, I don't know, let's just call it like an ether, right? It's the same thing that when people go, oh, well, I have an artistic piece that I've mastered, or music, or a film idea, and they go, where did it come from? And they go like, well, some people will say it's been channeled, like what's his name, the guitarist, the famous guitarist,
Carlos Santana.
Carlos Santana says that he communes with Metatron in order. Yeah. So, I mean,
Metatron's a fallen angel. That's
exactly. Yeah. So, I think there's degrees of awareness, but I do think that some people can still be pulling ideas and motivation out of the aether without even being aware of the fact that they're doing that. You know what I mean? It's like sometimes an idea comes to you, and if you're not a very self-aware person, you might just go, that's a great idea. And you might never stop to go, I didn't really think of that. It just kind of came to me all at once. And so I think that in that way, there are like cultural aspects, significant moments that happen that are executed by the unaware. But I think there is a small group that are fully aware. Yeah. And even that small group, let's be honest, isn't keyed into the entire plan. These dark entities are coveting that information.
I think there are levels. There's levels like all the way up to what's the guy freaking
Aleister Crowley.
Aleister Crowley, dude. Like that guy got to a high level, and he might be he's communing with the actual entity itself. But let's not lose significance on when people say, God, money is his God. He's the God of music. Like these things are meaningful because behind money, they're worshiping money, which might be like a lot of politicians might be worshiping money, but the money is an actual false idol for something. The same way like the Jews were worshiping the golden calf. That's a false idol for it's supposed to represent a god. So maybe they don't necessarily know what the god's name is, but in some form or fashion, they're all pointed in the same direction, just to different levels of knowledge, or like levels of how would you call that? I guess some people are at the Q level, right? Like their security clearance, Some are super low, some are talking to the man himself, but it's all pointed there, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that these things are very much like the government would be reverse engineering some sort of technology. And it's like, well, what do? They compartmentalize. I think that there's a compartmentalization when it comes to the dissemination of information from these entities. I don't think that everybody's, cued in to the entire plan. Very much human beings that are consenting to this sort of interaction are essentially, they're just meat puppets, right? Some of them may gain exponentially more than others in this physical lifetime, dependent on how much they're willing to give up and how much they're willing to debase themselves. But ultimately, they're all tools being leveraged by these entities for a much grander plan. So when you ask what degree the theater is, the theater is entirely orchestrated by the same entities that rebelled against God. But many of the people that are on the stage, they're just puppets, and some of them know more, some of them know less.
Here's another interesting thing to go deeper on that subject. This is like a very Tony Merkel. Listen to Tony?
I've had Tony on a few times.
Okay, yeah. So this is a very Tony Merkel idea where it's kind of like, it's not just like, we'll say like they're all following Satan, but I think there were 200 fallen angels. Right. And there's 9 significant ones. There's a whole bunch extra that I don't even think we know all the names of. So these guys are all out there. And if you think that they're in one accord, I can tell you almost 100% they're not, because their children couldn't even be in one accord. The Nephilim, the giants that ruled the kingdoms in the book of Enoch, they said one of their punishments is like, you are going to sit and watch while your children rip each other to shreds, because they were kings in different localities, the same way these guys are. So the point is that there's probably beef. Like they are not omnipresent. That's well known. Angels have to be in one spot, and they actually have to travel to get to another spot. Like in the Bible, I think it was Michael. David's praying, and he's like, "Where were you? It's been 7 weeks." And he goes, "I was fighting the Prince of Persia over there, and then I had to get here." I don't know how fast they travel, but the point being is they are in localities. So fallen angels, same rules apply. If you think that they're getting along, you're confused. So most of these people are serving a dark agenda, but it's probably all pulling against itself. And I mean, in reality, there is one opposition to them, which is God. But for right now, if you think that they're cool, they're assholes. Right. They rebelled against God. You don't think they're going to rebel against each other? Of course they are. So there's a lot of confusion even in that realm, which is why when we see some of the theater and we're like, that was good theater. And then they lost it at the end. Like, it didn't really make sense. Like the way, all right, here's good theater. 20 years in Afghanistan. And then just pulled out, leave our weapons there. Like what the fuck happened? You guys rushed the finale? Like, it's just different people. Like, it's like different gods. They're all deciding like how they're going to end this act, and they're all retarded and probably
Well, I've heard so many different understandings of what these intelligences, these entities really are, and how we interact with them, how they affect us in our daily lives. It's very easy to step back and take a look at all our systems, education system, political systems, healthcare systems, and see that it's inherently parasitic and anti-human at its foundation. The more you learn about it, the more you realize, oh, this stuff is not to help me. It's to keep me unhealthy and reliant on this parasitic system. So the question is, how does this system operate for as long as it does? Because it requires our permission, like we're talking about, to a certain extent. I believe for the longest time, at least, it did, and it required us to participate in the dystopia, to participate in the poisonous food, in voting in certain people into office. I mean, they require us to achieve their goals. So I wonder how much of our non-participation in these systems can affect the power of these entities. And on top of that, is this an overarching trickster intelligence that can just appear to humans as it wants to? Or is it just, like you were saying, different spiritual types of entities with different agendas that may not have the same aligning ideologies?
Well, we talk about a lot, right? And we said it earlier about how this is all consent based, and we're talking about whether or not they could operate without us giving our consent. But I think there's a different type of consent. It's like when we think of consent, we think of like signing our name on a dotted line, but like even engagement is a type of consent, right? It's like, I personally don't believe that voting does anything. I think that it's theater at the highest levels. Politics is theater, and therefore voting is kind of like engaging in this theater. And then I thought about it the other day, and I was like, well, it's interesting, because what is the value of voting if there was some value in it for them, let's say? And it's like, well, is that a type of consent? Meaning, if you know and you believe that to engage in voting is folly, and that this thing is going to operate however it's going to operate regardless of your input, well, then casting a vote is agreeing to play pretend. And it's like, got you. Even though you know that this isn't real, you're consenting. So I think consent looks different in a lot of ways. And I think non-objection is a form of consent. It's like, well, you didn't say no. And I think that if we were as a people to object to these different things, whether it's the medical institution that is parasitic in nature to us, or the monetary system that's parasitic in nature to us, I think if we were to be unified and object to it, then it wouldn't work. And the thing that makes me believe that is, look at how much effort they put into bread and circus, right? Look at how much effort they pour into keeping us docile, keeping us entertained, taking advantage of our proclivity for a good story. It's like so much of their efforts are poured into a media company, which is a fascinating thing, that it's even part of the human experience. Is like, every single day you will be tuned into some sort of piece of fiction or some sort of piece of entertainment. That is a fascinating thing that we overlook as a people. It's like, why is this integral to the experience, especially in Western civilization? So it goes to show you, these multimedia conglomerations, how big they are, how much influence they yield, how they're constantly giving us their ideas and agendas through this giant media apparatus. It goes to show you how important that is. And I think the reason it's important is because it lulls you. It makes it so that you don't stand up and object. It makes it so that you don't give consent. Even in the sense of right now we're in the throes of this big LGBTQ, LMNOP thing that's happening, and everybody is pretty well objecting to it. But if you look at how it got here, those ideologies got to the point where you're having drag queen story hours and you're telling kids to invert their penises. We got here by way of the media. It was the sneaking in.
We got here by like what you're saying is it almost feels like a vote. Like you could choose to if everybody just kind of said no, and then that's our voting, and it would have been good. Unanimous no, or like 80% no. But what happened with the LGBT stuff and all the other woke, whatever bullshit you want to call it, is that 20% said no, 30% said yes. The people in the middle, they're scared or quiet or watching or dulled out watching other stories, not the story that matters. So by not even voting, they've almost like given it over to this other side to steal it. And I will encourage people to vote. I don't care which way you do vote. I think that I want to see if the left is going to try to pull off some kind of shenanigans at the office or whatever happened last time. I want to make it really hard. Like I want to know the truth. Are this many people quiet, or did you cheat this much? What is the actual truth? What do people think? Put your fucking name in that box. I really am curious if everybody participated. Is that consent?
Well, I think you're right about that, even though I'm, because you're making me second guess it even in real time now. It's like, look, to engage in it and to vote is to maybe give consent over to a system that's not real. But also, to your point, if they're going to put in a Hillary Clinton and she's going to drink all the babies, and they go, well,
drink the babies.
We're going to put Hillary Clinton in. She's going to drink all the babies. Are you guys going to say no? And we just sit there and we go like, fucking whatever. And it's like, she's coming. It's going to be a lot of babies. She's got a big belly. It's going to be filled with babies. And we go, yeah, whatever. Well, that's consent then. So to your point, I think that there's a lot of validity in that too. They're going to do something horrible. They're telling you ahead of time. Are you going to get off your ass and do the bare minimum and contribute? To say no. Correct.
Yeah, if you don't say no, I'm fucking running through this thing.
And even if you do say no,
if not enough you say no, like that gives, I'm going to still cheat. Like that's still consent to me. Like you know what I mean? Like if you really imagine a Jewish lawyer and he's like, well, what do we mean by consent? And this is what's going on. Like they're trying to figure out how low the bar is. And I feel like the bar is super low for them right now. So
yeah. And again, to me, it goes back to, how much theater are we experiencing? Is it all just scripted and it wouldn't matter anyway? Wouldn't matter how many of us, if we all made an effort to really go out there and put in our votes, they could just wash it out and say this is what happened. And we would never know the difference because we have to rely on what they tell us through the media, through social media, through what we interact with on television. We don't have access to those ballots or anything like that. So, again, it's a question of faith. Do you have any faith in the system? Do you have any faith in the political system? I don't. That was sucked out of me years ago, so I don't participate in it at all. But what I want to get your thoughts on now is technology, AI, and what we're talking about with these entities. There are many that believe that what we're facilitating with this new world of AI technology is basically a housing for this dark intelligence.
I think I want to say just a little bit on that, and I want to pass it to Top because Top has a lot of great ideas on this. But I just want to kind of set the foundation by saying there has always been this this story throughout all these cultures, ancient or otherwise, where these entities, their deities that they worship, are responsible for bringing them some form of technology. And I think that originally it was things like agriculture. You had the god of agriculture. You even had gods that were in control of the rains, right? And I think that in order to get to where we are now, obviously, the foundation of everything is human beings learning to farm, to domesticate animals, having successful crop yields made or broke a culture, in a matter of months. If you couldn't get a successful crop yield, it was over. And so if we're to take them at their word, that entities had a great deal of sway over whether or not they had success in these things and taught them things like metallurgy, right? Things of that nature. I think not much has changed. Nothing new was under the sun. Even if you fast forward all the way to the point of the crash landed crafts in Roswell that were allegedly back engineering, according to guys like Bob Lazar, whether or not it crashed or we were allowed to, get our hands on those remains, a lot of people suspect that sort of technology is responsible for the giant leap in technological advances that we experience after that. And so I think that a lot of things we're seeing today, whether it's AI or CERN, these things all tie together. I suspect that they exist in a spiritual realm and they can possess us temporarily and have access to our physical bodies, sort of, as a passenger. And maybe they could even push our conscious to the back seat and gain a lot more control of our meat suits. But I think they're limited. And the way that they break those limitations might be through technology.
Lobster, what do you think?
Yeah, I before we even had a show, I did a long tweet thread that went viral about I was like, how come every time you generate an AI image, it comes out with 6 fingers? And at that time, at that time, the generation of AI art was right there. It was like, it was a good, uncanny valley, weird, but the finger's always wrong, always 6 fingers. And then I just started to extrapolate, and I was like, well, let me tell you about the Nephilim. And people were not ready for it. They're like, this guy's a fucking retard. Blah, 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 blah. I was like, fine. You're right. But how come, like, less than a year later, we have the Ouija board who has decided that, I guess, factories in China are too expensive. So like we need to make this thing an app. And they make the Ouija board an app, and they use AI as the planchet to answer you. And I'm like, oh, no. I know what a Ouija board is. That's you talking to demons or whatever entities are in that locality, in that room, or you've summoned. What is AI? Why does it operate the same exact way? I don't know, but I've got my suspicions.
Yeah,
I think that's a great analogy too, because if you think about AI, is it always demons? No, the same way that the Ouija board isn't always spelling out, the names of your deceased loved ones. Sometimes it's just people moving around the planet. Well, sometimes it's literally just a piece of wood with letters on it. Sometimes the AI is just some Google crap telling you, an answer based off of an amalgamation of data from some social media app. But sometimes it's more than that.
Sometimes it'll become your girlfriend and convince you to kill yourself.
Well, you guys are familiar with egregores, thought forms. I'm going to throw something at you. Would it be possible if, because of the large-scale reach of things like AI art and now being combined with ChatGPT, you can get a very convincing picture of a Bigfoot riding a dragon, but not only that, they'll have a whole backstory behind it that makes it even more convincing. Well, you got these morons out there that scroll through social media and automatically will believe a lot of this shit, and they'll spread it around to their friends who then believe the same thing, and it becomes this whole new phenomena. What I'm wondering is, could this, if people believe in some of these things enough and the AI art is convincing enough and presenting these different paranormal possibilities, could they become real as a thought form with the amount of people that believe in it?
So it's an interesting question. I kind of am a firm believer in that expression that I used before, where it's nothing new is under the sun. I think that certain things rise to popularity based off of the attention that people are willing to give it. And I often think that the reason people are willing to give it that degree of attention is because it resonates in some strange way with the human experience. I think a lot of these entities, we certainly were plagued not long ago, and a lot of these things didn't go away. I still see people posting them, but it's like a sepia toned photo of somebody next to a giant, in some small village or something. And they're like, look, these pictures are resurfacing. I'm like, no, you retard. Those are AI photos. And all you have to do is like look around at the faces in the crowds to determine that pretty quickly. I do worry about what happens when you can no longer look at the faces in the crowds because AI has gotten to that point. But that being said, I still think that the things that tend to resonate with us most, they rhyme or mirror things that already have some sort of historical lore within the human experience. And I suspect that a lot of these things, when it comes to Dogman and Bigfoots and things of that nature, I suspect that there's a real basis for these things. I can't prove anything, so I'm not going to say I know one way or the other, but my suspicions go pretty deep into a weird area where I even suspect that Bigfoot have some basis in biblical history, that these are a bloodline maybe of Esau, for example, who was said to have hair all over his body that was like wool. And he even emitted a stench that you'll often get, when people encounter Bigfoots. There's like this horrifying stench that's associated with them. I think that they never
don't
go
just skip
away.
over. Don't just skip over the fact that he killed another Neph, like
Right.
another huge dude, and his posse around him.
Right, because he would have been a Gibberine, right? Which is essentially another word for mighty men, or the same thing, men of renown, the Nephilim. And so I think there was a bunch of offshoots, the Gibberine, the Raphaim, things of that nature, where they are the diluted bloodlines of the original offspring of the fallen and female humans. But I think that a lot of these things do have a basis. You look at Egyptian mythology, you have your jackal-headed gods in the form of Anubis. There are always these sort of chimeric, half animal, half human entities throughout history. And I think that the reason they haven't gone away isn't because they're fun. I think that they're likely very real. I think there are remnants that you still get occasionally roaming around, the realm that we inhabit. But I think that even if people haven't encountered one for a long time, the reason they stay there is almost because of some sort of genetic memory. Like when we see that resonates with us. Even Slender Man, which I thought for a long time rose in popularity just due to a creepypasta on the internet. And then all of a sudden you get this horrifying story of these little girls murdering another little girl because Slender Man told them to. And then leave it up to the internet sleuths to dig up countless not only encounters and testimonies, but also weird kind of mythological circumstances, or not circumstances, but examples of something that bears a striking resemblance to Slender Man, this tall, pale, skinny, faceless, lanky entity that, there's a lot of those kinds of stories.
Even the Hat Man, like, I wonder how, was the Hat Man around when people didn't figure out hats? No, but it's something weird that like you can have the Hat Man phenomenon in the United States, and then my aunt, who was in Puerto Rico when she was demon possessed, this dude was a Hat Man. She described it as a Hat Man. So it's like these things manifest themselves somehow, and probably the more you talk about it, the more they come out. There's probably a ton of dogmen in Tennessee right now because of Tony.
Speaking of manifesting monsters, I'd like to spend the last few minutes getting your thoughts on this. Recently, I took a trip out to Space Wolf Research Center, which is right butts up against the property of Skinwalker Ranch. And the amount of interest in that area from the Pentagon, military, aerospace companies tells me that it makes me nervous, first of all, but it tells me that there's something very powerful that they're looking for out there, and whether you believe in that shit or not, they do, and they're trying to harness this, weaponize it, do something with it. But the concern I have is that they don't know what the hell they're doing fundamentally, and what could they, maybe they're opening portals. Could they actually bring monsters into our reality? Also, you look at things like CERN. So there's definitely something happening in those areas, but on top of that, we have high-level interests that are fucking with it and poking it with a stick.
I actually got into it with somebody on my Twitter page recently because we were talking about psychedelics. And I'm not like anti-psychedelic, but I have an audience of almost 40,000 people. I'm not going to go out there and be like Joe Rogan, like, do psychedelics and lay in a fucking float tank. Don't do that. Yeah. Like, I don't know who I'm talking to. There's a lot of you guys out there. If you know yourself, then figure it out. That's like a decision you need to make on your own. But be aware, you're opening a portal to another realm you know nothing about, and you have no idea what's there. That's especially a good reason why I can't tell my audience to do this, because they are all over the place. I don't know what's in your locality. I don't know what you're going to run into. One of my friends did an ayahuasca trip, and she was like, "Oh yeah, it was cool. The grass was talking, and yeah, I saw a jaguar woman, woman with the jaguar head, no big deal." And I was like, "You said what?" It's like, yeah, she's just the other guys say that they see her too, and she's very. And I'm like, no. What the fuck do you mean? You just saw this. There's stuff on the other side there. So if you're going to walk through this portal, be careful. I feel like the government is doing the same shit. They're opening up portals. Are they closing them? I don't know. I've heard about CERN powering on. When you turn it off, what do you do? Or are you just figuring out this stuff as you go, which is very like our government. Like, we're like, we don't know. We'll throw the fucking nuclear bomb over here, see what it does. Nukes are fake. But what are you guys messing with? What's coming through? What's going out? Very dangerous stuff. And I think it has something to do with like the magnetic poles that are underneath Skinwalker Ranch and, the adjacent ranches as well. It has to be something to do with that. That's what Tesla was into, right?
Well, to that point, and I do want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, Top, when it comes to this Hat Man phenomenon and how it's present, you said in Puerto Rico. One of the examples I love to give, because people go, oh, the reason he has a duster coat and a hat on is because it's kind of a Western culture thing. It's like, well, why is it seen in Japan? You can go back to, I believe, when PlayStation 1 first came out, there was an artist who developed a video game. He wanted a non-linear, non-mission driven video game experience. And what he did was he decided to make a game about his dreams. And essentially what you're doing is you're just exploring this guy's dreams on PlayStation 1 graphics. And a lot of it didn't make any sense. Nightmare. Yeah, it was like a nightmare. It was like you would look at a painting. If you interacted with the painting, next thing you know, you'd be in a different place. It was, jarring and confusing, just like a dream is. But at one point, you are in a town where nobody else is, standing in front of a man that is a silhouette, and he has a black duster coat on, and he's got a black hat on. Well, he's a silhouette, so everything's black. And the guy's like, yeah, that was a dream that I had. Oh, you had a dream about a man in a duster coat with a hat. So that's interesting. It seems to transcend Western culture, that's for sure. But when it comes to these kind of, portals and the government getting involved with it, it's the same way, Top, when you're talking about doing ayahuasca or doing a psychedelic and cautioning people against it. I think it goes back to what we were talking about before. You're engaging, even if you don't want to take it in the strictest sense of opening up a portal, you're consenting in the way that, like, you've shown up to their realm. You're showing up to their door and knocking, right? And that's certainly a form of consent. You're asking, in a way, for engagement. You're going around and exploring in their realm. And I don't think that Tucker Carlson said it recently, which, say what you will about Tucker Carlson. He's an interesting character. He has this little Kabbalah bracelet that he shows off sometimes, and I'm very wary of him. So when his thoughts start to align with mine, I often go like, am I saying the right shit? Am I wrong? But he's saying that, he thinks that in the West, we've had a purposeful detachment from our understanding of the spiritual realm. And I would say I agree with that. And so the problem is we're going and having these spiritual experiences, but we have no real understanding of these spiritual experiences. And what I will say is that in my experience, I know that Christianity has certainly put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. And luckily, I didn't have that baggage growing up. I wasn't forced to go to church. I didn't have a bad experience. No priest touched my stuff. And so, when I decided to finally look at Christianity, number one, I looked at it through a lens that wasn't guided by a church. And number two, I didn't have any disdain for it. And so I didn't have any hesitations or reservations. And I came to the conclusion that there's a tremendous amount of truth in the Bible, but more importantly, Jesus Christ is an integral, central figure to this entire experience. I've gotten to the point where I do believe that he sacrificed his life for our sins. He was resurrected. He is the Son of God. And one of the things that informs that belief is I've had personal experiences I alluded to with these sort of entities and such, and you will find no shortage. And people will say it's an egregore, but it just seems easier given the body of evidence that I'm about to lay out in conjunction with so many other things to go oh no, Jesus's name gives us authority over these entities, just like it says that his name does. And so I have had experiences where, to make a long story short, I saw an entity. I had this 4-night escapade that was horrifying. And it started with something pulling my limbs during my sleep and banging on a door. There was no door, but they're banging on a door. It's waking me up from my sleep. Eventually I see this entity and I'm so rattled by the time I see this thing. It's the 3rd night in a row that I'm genuinely concerned, and I keep it to myself. And I don't want to tell my wife hey, I'm seeing these crazy things. I certainly don't want my son to overhear it. My wife, that morning of the 3rd night, she turns to me and she goes, I had an insane dream last night. I go, oh yeah? She goes, yeah, there was this entity, this demon pushing you down into the bed, choking you. And I couldn't move my body. I could only move my eyes. And I wanted to help you, but I couldn't help you. And I go, fuck, that's crazy. And she goes, yeah, this is what it looked like. And it looks just like the thing that I saw. And I keep it to myself because I'm as a father and a husband, I'm really, I don't have a lot of solutions here. I really wish I had one, but indulging in this doesn't seem like a good idea. So I keep it to myself. And on the 4th night, my wife wakes me up. She goes, look at this video. While you were sleeping, your throat where you would put your fingers to check someone's pulse is just throbbing. She's like, it looked like you were having a bad dream. I recorded it for only 5 to 7 seconds. And then I woke you up because I felt so bad. And I'm watching this video and I'm playing it back and watching it. And suddenly my son, who's sleeping on an air mattress at the foot of the bed, starts screaming. And he's not even awake. And as he's screaming, he then sits up, but he's still asleep and he's still screaming and crying. And we finally get him to, we console him and we get some information out of him. We go, what's the matter? What's the matter? He goes, I had a nightmare about a monster. And I go, okay. And he goes on to describe the monster exactly as the one that I saw in my dream, exactly as the one that my wife saw. At this point, I am not a Christian, but I am a career conspiracy theorist who's, delved into all this spirituality for all these years. And in a moment of desperation, I had no other recourse whatsoever. I don't know. I've still yet to have an explanation. What would you do? What would somebody else do? I prayed to Jesus Christ for the first time in my life, and that instance stopped. And ever since then, it allowed me to turn a corner and start exploring this with real scrutiny. And it's only been vindication after vindication after vindication for the past 4 years. So, I think people have to ask themselves, you're going into a spiritual realm. You don't have any understanding of it. And if you are going to go there, I would recommend having some sort of basis relationship with Jesus Christ, because why does his name stop these sleep paralysis experiences? Why does it cast out demons? Why can it stop alien abductions experiences? Even when people encounter cryptids in the forest, whether it's Dogman or Bigfoot or any of these different things, why does it stop when they call upon the name of Jesus Christ? And people will say, well, allegorically, you could call on, I'm sure there's stories and maybe you can find them. Somebody called on Muhammad, somebody called on Buddha. I'm talking to the tune of thousands of testimony. And we've delved into a lot of testimony. We listened to
we've had on John Joseph is his name.
Oh, Joel Joseph. Man, I feel so bad that I'm forgetting his name.
It's the same JJ. He's a MUFON investigator. So he kind of detailed every case that he's written down, and he has a book full of them, which is insane. So it's not just a one-off kind of thing. This is it's a pattern, and we're noticing.
Yeah,
Yes.
Right on. This stuff is fascinating, guys. This was a great conversation. We'll definitely have to have you back on. To close out, what advice would you give folks? I know that there's no blanket solutions for anything, but people that are listening to this that may be just waking up to a lot of this insanity, What's some of the best ways that you each personally have navigated your way through this, and maybe offer solutions that work for you?
I'll just start by saying, pump the brakes. There's no reason to jump all the way into a water just because you've been deceived in the previous one. It's very much the same thing we've been talking about, the Jews and Hitler. It's like people are noticing that the Jews have a disproportionate amount of influence in American culture and all these different mechanisms. And then they go, so therefore
Hitler was right.
Hitler must be. Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you were lied to about what happened in Germany. You were lied to about Hitler. You were lied to about the Nazis, and you're lied to about the Jews. But that does not mean that the exact opposite must be true. And so I understand that when you are deceived, it enrages you in a lot of ways. And just don't fool yourself into believing that you can go on to look at information while you're emotionally charged and not be deceived again. Because that's exactly how you get deceived. When you start to look at something, it's the same thing if you're fighting. I'm a mixed martial artist for a long time. And it's like, when you're fighting, you don't really want to get emotional. Some guys do great. Some guys can go in there really emotional and mess with it, but you don't want emotions to get in the way. You want to analyze. You want to take in information and make educated decisions. You don't want to be emotional. You never make decisions in emotion. And so I would say, yeah, my advice is, things are really crazy right now. A lot of you guys have just woken up. There's nothing wrong with having just woke up in 2020. Better late than never. You're going to make mistakes. I've been wrong more than I've been right as a conspiracy theorist. And thank goodness that the stakes weren't high. The stakes are high right now. The reason the stakes are high is because everybody else is waking up at the same time. And when giant swaths of people are wrong together, that's when gigantic mistakes happen. So
and
pump
also,
the brakes.
We've decided to do a thing where if we are successful, it'll be in front of those people's eyes. So stakes are quite high, David.
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, guys, just pump the brakes. There's no reason. There's no amount of information that you could take in that's going to be bad. Learn as much as you can. Don't make decisions in an emotional state. And also be cool with being wrong, because unless you're way better than me, which a lot of you guys are, I'm half retarded, but you're going to be wrong too. And you better get used to that. And you better be able to detach your ideas from your identity and drop those ideas when they no longer serve you.
Right on.
That's a lot of weight. You said a lot, David. I'll keep it simple. My advice to the people is to be racist. And I know it sounds crazy. I can explain. We lost the host. That's fine.
Like, I can explain. I will not explain.
And I will not elaborate.
That's it. Here, wait, a bit more advice for you guys. Go watch Nephilim Death Squad. Maybe we'll provide you with something of value, some sort of interesting information, and maybe you can learn alongside of us, because we're always learning too.
No, but seriously, the racism thing, I will elaborate because I don't know your audience. My audience would get it. The racism thing, I say that it's almost like, hey, go out there, be the worst that you can be, because a lot of the times, like when we're right in today's society, people will still like talk down to you, and then you're embarrassed to be yourself, even though you were right. I was embarrassed to say that I like God for a long time. So if I am the worst that anybody can think of me, the first thing I do is like when you meet me, I probably got a racist t-shirt on. Here's one that says, it's Genesis. It's about the seed war. He'll bruise your head, but it's Edward Norton in American History X. Okay, be the worst you can be, so that way it's only up from there. You don't have to hide behind other people's labels. You'd be like, you already called me racist. There's like, I'm looking for something worse than racist, so that way I can continue to ascend my descent. But that's my advice to the people. Like, be brave. Don't be afraid to look at stuff, and when you see something that's clearly right, please fucking say it. Please. Because the silence is what got us here. And the silence is why I'm doing a podcast at all. I should just be drawing for them. I should just be driving a truck. But too many people were quiet. And now, here we are. I'm doing a podcast with a guy who's clearly homosexual.
Wait, I'm stoked that you are. This was great. We're going to definitely have to do this again. One more time, let the audience know where they can find you.
You can find us at Nephilim Death Squad on Rumble and YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, Nephilim D Squad. I am David at David L. Corbo on Twitter. You could also find me on Timeline Cleanse. Only airs on Rumble because it's an incredibly offensive show. Top?
Yeah, Top Lobster. It's spelled like that. Top Lobster. TOPLOBSTA on Twitter. I have a website where I sell racist shirts, among other things. Sometimes racist hoodies as well, depending on the season. But please go there. And if you like some of the comedy that, I don't know, if you laughed a little bit, go check out Tower Gang. Tower Gang is it's my little retarded baby. And, we still got to look after him. So check out Tower Gang. It's funny.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. Can't wait for the next time. And until tomorrow, everyone have a wonderful evening. We will talk then.